Somewhere out there, across the cold silence of space, alien commanders are learning one terrifying truth. Never underestimate a Death Worlder. Welcome to HFY Death World Stories, where humanity shows the galaxy what we're made of. Wars, warships, alien encounters, raw human fire.
The sensor array had been silent for 3 weeks. Rena tapped her claws against the console, watching the empty star field on her display. Boring work, monitoring the frontier between Imperial space and the human territories. Nothing ever happened out here. The humans kept to themselves, trading their raw materials and staying quiet. Smart species knew better than to provoke the Empire. The alert tone made her jump. A blip appeared on the edge of her scanner range. She leaned forward, adjusting the sensitivity. Probably another asteroid cluster drifting through. The readings stabilized and her breath caught. Energy signature. Massive, moving at sublight speeds toward their position. "Commander Harlick, I have something," she called across the station. The old warrior shuffled over, his scales dulled with age. He had fought in the Crawl campaigns back when the Empire still had to prove its dominance. Now he spent his days watching empty space. "What is it?" "Energy signature. Big one coming from human space." Harlick snorted. "Humans don't have big ships. Their largest vessels are cargo haulers. Check your calibration." Rena ran the diagnostic. Everything functioned normally. She expanded the scan radius and felt her stomach twist. The signature was getting stronger. Whatever approached was enormous. "Sir, the readings are accurate. This thing is putting out more energy than a dreadnought." "Impossible. Human ships are small. Fast, yes, but small. They lack the industrial capacity for capital ship construction." Harlick pulled up the Imperial intelligence files on his personal screen. Humanity's naval assets were well documented. Dozens of patrol craft, maybe 100 system defense boats, nothing bigger than a frigate. The Empire had been planning to absorb human space for years. Easy conquest, minimal resistance expected. "Run a full spectrum analysis," Harlick ordered. "I want to know what we're looking at." Rena's fingers flew across the controls. The computer processed the data, cross-referencing known ship classifications. Nothing matched. The energy output suggested fusion reactors, but the configuration was wrong. Too much power for the size, or too much size for the power. The proportions made no sense. "Commander, I'm getting secondary readings now. Hull composition analysis shows high-density metals. Compressed ore plating, maybe? The computer can't identify the design." Harlick felt the first whisper of concern. In 30 years of service, his scanners had never failed to identify a vessel type. Every species in known space built ships according to certain principles. Efficient hull design, optimal power distribution, standard weapon placements. This signature violated all the normal patterns. "Distance," he asked. 4 light hours and closing. Current speed suggests arrival in 6 hours. Harlick opened a comm channel to Fleet Command. Admiral Kren's face appeared on the screen, looking annoyed at the interruption. "This better be important, Harlick. I'm in the middle of tactical planning." "Sir, we have an unidentified vessel approaching from human space. Energy signature is off the charts, requesting instructions." Kren's expression shifted from annoyance to interest. "Human vessel, what class?" "Unknown, sir. It doesn't match any known classification." "Send me the scanner data." Kren studied the information, his eyes narrowing. "This has to be an error. Humans don't build ships this size." "We've triple-checked the readings, Admiral. Whatever this is, it's real and it's heading straight for us." Kren drummed his claws on his desk. The invasion plan depended on accurate intelligence. If humans had somehow developed capital ships without Imperial knowledge, the entire strategic calculation changed. "Maintain observation. I'm dispatching 3 destroyers to your position. Do not engage without my direct order." The channel closed. Harlick turned back to Rena. "Keep tracking it. I want updates every 10 minutes." The hours crawled past. The mysterious vessel continued its steady approach. Rena gathered more data with each scan. The ship was long, at least 4 kilometers from the energy distribution pattern. It showed no signs of weapons charging, no shield activation. Just that massive power signature and the slow, inevitable advance. "Sir, it's dropping out of sublight," Rena announced. 3 light minutes away, we should have visual range." Harlick activated the optical cameras. The image took a moment to resolve across the distance. When it did, he stared in disbelief. The ship was ugly. There was no other word for it. Imperial vessels were elegant, curved, designed by master architects. This thing looked like something built in a scrapyard. The hull was flat planes of metal, welded together without any aesthetic consideration. Scarring covered the surface, old. Damage patched with mismatched plating. Burns marked where something had torn into the armor. The whole structure seemed held together by stubbornness rather than engineering. "What am I looking at?" Harlick whispered. Rena queried the identification transponder. The response came back in simple text. HMCS Relentless Heavy Industry Conversion Vessel. Heavy Industry Conversion? Harlick pulled up the term in the Imperial database. Nothing. No military classification by that name existed. He switched to civilian registries. There it was. A designation for ships that had been modified from their original purpose. Usually mining equipment converted for salvage operations, never for military use. "They turned a mining ship into a warship," Rena said, her voice filled with disbelief. Harlick zoomed the cameras closer. He could see the details now. Cargo bay doors that had been welded shut. Attachments on the hull that might be weapons, though they looked more like industrial tools. A massive emitter on the bow that could be a mining laser. The whole thing radiated desperate improvisation. "Why would they do this?" he asked. "This ship is a target, no maneuverability, no proper weapons, no military-grade shields." Rena checked the reactor readings again. "Sir, those power signatures, they're not military fusion plants. They're industrial reactors, meant for processing ore or cutting through asteroids. If they're using those for ship power, the output would be enormous but unstable." The implications settled over Harlick like cold water. Humans had taken civilian ships and turned them into weapons platforms. Crude weapons platforms, yes, but if they were desperate enough to try this, what did that say about their intentions? And more importantly, how many civilian ships did humanity possess? The comm system beeped. Incoming transmission from the human vessel. Harlick opened the channel. A human face appeared on screen, older with gray hair and tired eyes. "This is Captain Davies of the HMCS Relentless. We are on a peaceful survey mission through this region. We mean no harm." Peaceful, with a ship that size, converted for obvious military purposes. Harlick didn't believe it for a second. "You are in Imperial monitored space," Harlick replied. "State your true intentions." Davies smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just passing through, Commander, unless you'd prefer we turn back." Before Harlick could respond, Rena grabbed his arm. "Sir, I'm picking up more signatures, same type, dozens of them lighting up across human space." Harlick's blood ran cold. Not one converted ship, dozens, maybe hundreds. The humans were preparing for war. Davies ran his hand along the metal wall of the converted ship. The corridor was narrow, pipes and conduits exposed overhead. This vessel had spent 20 years hauling platinum ore from the outer belt mines. Now it carried missiles instead of minerals. The transformation had taken 6 months of round-the-clock work. Every cargo hauler, every mining ship, every construction vessel humanity owned was being retrofitted. They had no choice. "Captain, we're getting scanned pretty hard," Lieutenant Lin said from the tactical station. She was young, fresh from the 3-month crash course the government called naval training. Before the crisis, she had been studying agriculture. Now she was humanity's idea of a weapons officer. "Let them look," Davies replied. "That's why we're here." Chief Engineer Park emerged from a maintenance shaft, grease on his hands. "Reactor 2 is running hot again. I can keep it stable, but if we have to push the engines, I can't promise anything." "Will it explode?" "Probably not, maybe. I used to maintain ice mining equipment. These reactors are meant to run steady for months, not maneuver in combat." Park wiped his hands on a rag. "We're flying a repurposed ore hauler with mining lasers strapped to the hull. This whole thing is held together with hope and welding." Davies appreciated the honesty. Every person aboard knew the truth. They were not a real warship. They were desperate humans pretending to be dangerous. The Empire had 300 proper military vessels. Humanity had converted 40 civilian ships and hoped it would be enough to make invasion look too costly. "The Empire thinks we're weak," Davies said. "Small ships, no military tradition, easy target. Our job is to make them recalculate." Lin checked her console. "Sir, I'm detecting Imperial vessels inbound, 3 of them, destroyer class." Here we go. Davies moved to the command chair. It was the same chair he had used for 30 years of cargo runs. Someone had bolted a weapons control panel to the armrest. Everyone to battle stations. Lynn, what's our weapons status? Mining laser is operational. Missiles are loaded. Point defense grid is active. She paused. Sir, we have 48 missiles total. Standard military loadout would be 300. Then we better not miss. The Imperial destroyers appeared on the display, sleek and deadly. They moved with practiced precision, forming an attack pattern. Davies had watched videos of Imperial fleet actions. Their crews trained from birth. Their ships were masterpieces of military engineering. Everything about them screamed professional competence. The comm channel opened. An Imperial officer appeared, his scales gleaming in perfect uniform. Human vessel, you are ordered to cut your engines and prepare for boarding. Failure to comply will result in destruction. Davies leaned back in his chair. This is Captain Davies. We're in neutral space on a peaceful mission. We have no intention of being boarded. You are operating a military vessel in proximity to Imperial territory. Submit or be destroyed. Military vessel, this is a ore hauler. We just added some upgrades. Davies kept his voice calm, almost bored. Let them wonder if he was bluffing. The Imperial officer's expression hardened. You have 1 minute to comply. The channel closed. Davies looked at his crew. Park was sweating despite the cold air. Lynn gripped her console until her knuckles turned white. Everyone knew what came next. Weapons free, Davies ordered. If they shoot, we shoot back. The first Imperial salvo came exactly 60 seconds later. Energy beams lanced across space, striking the Relentless's hull. Davies felt the ship shudder. Damage reports scrolled across the displays. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Secondary damage to the sensor array. They hit us pretty hard, Park said. But the hull is holding. That compressed ore plating is taking the hits better than I expected. Return fire. Mining laser, continuous burn. The massive laser on the bow activated. It had been designed to cut through asteroids, operating for hours at a time without stopping. The beam struck the lead Imperial destroyer's shields and kept hitting them, and kept hitting them. Imperial shields were built to deflect weapons fire, powerful bursts of energy that lasted seconds. The mining laser did not burst. It burned steadily, pouring constant energy into the shield envelope. Their shields are fluctuating, Lynn reported, surprise in her voice. They're not designed for sustained fire like this. Keep it on them, Davies ordered. Launch. Missiles pattern Delta. 24 missiles erupted from the repurposed cargo bays. The Imperial point defense systems activated, shooting down the incoming warheads with ruthless efficiency. 19 missiles destroyed. 5 got through. Each warhead had been designed to shatter asteroids into manageable chunks. The explosions were not elegant. They were brutal, overwhelming releases of force. The Imperial destroyer rocked under the impacts, armor buckling. Damage to target, Lynn called out. Their shields are down, hull breaches detected. The other 2 destroyers changed tactics, trying to flank. Davies watched them move. Fast, coordinated, professional. Park, can we rotate to face them? This ship turns like a drunk whale, but I'll try. The Relentless began a ponderous rotation. The Imperial ships adapted, moving faster, trying to hit the engines. More energy beams struck home. More damage reports. Fire on Deck 9. Reactor 3 showing stress fractures. Lynn, give me the point defense system. Sir, that's our debris deflection laser. It's meant to shoot rocks. Rocks missiles, same principle, light them up. The point defense grid activated. Hundreds of small lasers designed to vaporize ore fragments in the ship's path. They tracked the incoming Imperial missiles with casual efficiency. The system had been calibrated to handle thousands of small objects simultaneously. Military missiles were actually easier targets. Every Imperial missile died before reaching the hull. Admiral Kren watched from his flagship 6 light minutes away. The battle reports made no sense. A converted ore hauler was fighting 3 of his best destroyers to a standstill. The human ship should have been destroyed in the first salvo. Instead, it was trading blows like a wounded bear, too tough to die quickly. Sir, the destroyer Valiant is reporting critical damage. They're requesting permission to withdraw. Kren stared at the tactical display. 1 destroyer crippled, another damaged. The third still fighting but making no progress, all against a ship that looked like it had been assembled in a junkyard. "Withdraw all ships," he ordered. "Maintain observation distance." The destroyers pulled back. The human vessel did not pursue. It simply hung in space, scarred and burning in places, but intact. Kren opened a secure channel to Imperial Command. "We have a problem. The humans are not what we thought." The War Council chamber was silent. 12 Imperial generals and admirals sat around the obsidian table, watching the combat footage for the third time. The converted human ore hauler fought with all the grace of a falling rock, yet 2 destroyers had limped back to dock for repairs. Admiral Kren stood at the head of the table. His scales had lost their luster in the past week. Sleep had become difficult. "The intelligence failure is total," he said. "We assumed humans lacked military-industrial capacity. We were wrong." General Thas, oldest among them, tapped the table with one claw. "They have no military-industrial capacity. That ship proves it. Look at it. Crude modifications, civilian equipment repurposed. They are desperate." "Desperate enough to fight," Kren replied, "and numerous enough to matter." He activated the holographic display. The star map showed human space dotted with thousands of markers. "Our latest surveillance has identified the human civilian fleet. 6,000 registered vessels of significant size, mining ships, ore haulers, construction platforms, ice processors, every type of industrial craft imaginable." "Civilian ships," Thas repeated, "not warships." The Relentless was civilian 6 months ago. Now it crippled the destroyer Valiant. Kren magnified a section of the map. "We're detecting energy signature changes across the human fleet, reactor modifications, power rerouting, weapon system installations. They are converting everything." Another admiral, younger and ambitious, leaned forward. "How many conversions?" "Current estimate, 400 vessels already modified. Another 1,000 in progress. If they convert even half their civilian fleet, they will outnumber our entire battle fleet 3-1. The chamber erupted in protest. Voices overlapped, arguing, denying, calculating. Thas slammed his fist on the table. "Silence!" He waited for quiet. "Numbers mean nothing. 1 Imperial warship equals 10 of their conversions. Our crews are trained warriors. Theirs are cargo haulers playing soldier. Our ships are purpose-built for combat. Theirs are flying scrap heaps." Kren pulled up the combat analysis. The Relentless absorbed direct hits that should have penetrated its hull. The ore plating they use for armor is denser than our military-grade alloys. Yes, it is heavier and slower, but it works. Their mining laser was not designed as a weapon. But it overloaded our shields through sustained fire. Their point defense system was meant to deflect debris, and it destroyed every missile we fired. "Accidents," Thas said. "Lucky circumstances." "Then explain this." Kren showed new footage. A different human vessel, this one smaller. A construction ship that had built orbital stations. Now it carried what appeared to be industrial rail guns, equipment originally used to launch building materials. The ship engaged an Imperial patrol cruiser. The rail guns fired solid slugs of compressed metal at hypersonic speeds. Cheap ammunition, mass-produced, endless. The cruiser's shields collapsed under the barrage. "They are weaponizing their entire industrial base," Kren said. "Every tool becomes a weapon. Every civilian ship becomes a platform. They cannot match our quality, so they are overwhelming us with quantity." A strategy officer brought up economic projections. "Sir, I have run the numbers. To build 1 Imperial destroyer requires 4 years and significant resources. Our shipyards can produce approximately 30 capital ships per year. The humans are converting civilian vessels in 6 months using existing infrastructure. They can field 200 conversions annually." The implications settled over the council like ash. Thas shook his head. "This is not war. This is barbarism. What honor is there in fighting with mining equipment?" "Honor does not matter if we lose," Kren said quietly. "I recommend we abort the invasion." The chamber exploded again. Abort? The Empire had never aborted a planned conquest. The resources already committed, the political ramifications, the loss of face. Impossible. Thas stood. "We proceed. The humans will learn that improvised weapons cannot stand against true military might. We will crush them." Kren met his eyes. "At what cost? Every converted ship we destroy will be replaced by 2 more. Every Imperial vessel we lose takes years to replace. The mathematics are against us." "Then we build faster." "We cannot. Our shipyards are already at capacity. We would need to construct new facilities, train new workers, expand the entire military-industrial complex. That would take decades. The humans are modifying civilian infrastructure right now. Another admiral spoke up, her voice thoughtful. What if we target their conversion facilities, destroy the shipyards where they modify these vessels? They do. Not use shipyards, the intelligence officer replied. The conversions happen at civilian ports, mining stations, even in open space. There is no central facility to target. Their entire economy is the facility. Kren watched the realization spread across the council. The Empire was not facing an enemy fleet. It was facing an entire civilization that had turned its productive capacity toward war. Every factory, every dock, every industrial platform was now a potential military asset. We need to reconsider our assumptions, Kren said. We planned this invasion based on traditional military calculations, ship counts, firepower ratios, training quality, but the humans are not fighting a traditional war. They are fighting an industrial war. They are betting their civilian economy against our military fleet. And you think they can win? Thos demanded. I think they can make winning so expensive we wish we had never started. Kren closed the displays. We have 200 capital ships in the invasion fleet. The humans have identified 400 conversions and growing. If we achieve a kill ratio of 3-to-1, which is optimistic given the relentless engagement, we destroy 1,200 human vessels while losing all 200 of our own. The humans will still have thousands of civilian ships left to convert. We will have nothing. Rebuild? With what? The resources for those 200 ships represent 10 years of Imperial production. The humans are using civilian equipment they already own. The economic burden is entirely different. Thos sat down slowly. The council was quiet now. Numbers had a way of cutting through pride. Recommendations? Thos asked finally. Kren took a breath. Open diplomatic channels. Negotiate a settlement. The humans have proven they can make invasion prohibitively costly. We achieve nothing by proceeding except mutual destruction. The Emperor will not accept this. Then the Emperor needs to see these projections. Kren looked around the table. We are soldiers, we fight when necessary, but we also recognize when fighting leads to ruin. This is that moment. The vote was called. The council was divided, but enough supported Kren. The invasion was postponed, pending further analysis. Outside the chamber, Kren watched the stars. Humanity had won without destroying the Imperial fleet. They had won by making the cost of victory unbearable. It was not glorious, it was not honorable, it was simply effective. And that terrified him more than any battle. The factory had produced fusion reactors for mining operations. Now it produced them twice as fast. Rachel Torres watched the assembly line through the observation window, her reflection ghostly in the reinforced glass. Below, workers swarmed over half-finished reactor cores. The night shift had ended an hour ago, but nobody went home anymore. We are behind schedule, her assistant said, checking the tablet. 17 reactors this week. We need 25 to meet the conversion quota. Rachel rubbed her eyes. She had been the facility manager when this was a civilian operation. Comfortable hours, safety regulations, profit margins. Now she answered to the military, though they barely had a military to speak of. 3 months ago, Earth had fewer than 100 trained naval officers. Now they had thousands of civilians pretending to know what they were doing. Push the third line to double shifts, she ordered, and talk to engineering about cutting the testing phase. Ma'am, we already cut testing by 40%. These reactors are being installed on ships with minimal safety checks. The alternative is the Empire shows up and we have no ships at all. Rachel turned from the window. Those reactors just need to work long enough to scare them off. We are not building a navy to last decades. We are building one to last months. The assistant nodded and left. Rachel walked through the facility, past workers who looked exhausted but determined. Everyone knew the situation. The Empire had 300 years of military tradition. Humanity had 6 months of desperate improvisation. This was not a war they could win through superior tactics or technology. This was about making the cost too high. Her comm unit buzzed. Director Morrison from the Central Planning Committee. She accepted the call. Torres, I need an update on reactor production, Morrison said without preamble. His voice sounded as tired as she felt. 17 this week, ramping to 25 next week if we can maintain the pace. Not good enough. We have 50 ships waiting for power plants. Every day they sit in dock is a day the Empire could decide to attack. I cannot manufacture precision equipment faster without sacrificing quality. Then sacrifice quality. We need numbers, not perfection. Morrison's image flickered. The latest intelligence says the Empire is hesitating. They are running calculations, trying to figure out if invasion is worth it. Our job is to make sure the answer is no. Rachel understood the strategy. Humanity was not trying to defeat the Imperial fleet. They were trying to defeat Imperial mathematics. Every converted ship was a data point. Every modified weapon system was evidence that humans could sustain this insane production rate indefinitely. What about crew training? She asked. I hear we are pulling people from civilian jobs with barely any preparation. 3 months of basic training, then onto a ship. We do not have time for proper military education. Morrison looked away from the camera. Yesterday, I assigned a merchant captain to command a converted ice hauler. The woman spent 30 years shipping frozen water. Now she is in charge of a warship. That is what we have to work with. We are going to get people killed. We are going to get people killed either way. At least this gives them a chance to fight back. The call ended. Rachel returned to the observation window. The assembly line continued its relentless rhythm. Parts moving, workers assembling, reactors taking shape. The math was simple and brutal. The Empire could build better ships, but humans could build more ships faster using what they already had. Across human space, the conversion continued. A titanium mining platform became a missile carrier. A comet harvester became a long-range patrol vessel. A asteroid processor became a weapons testing ground. Every single civilian ship with a working reactor was being evaluated for military potential. In the orbital shipyard above Mars, workers cut into the hull of a massive cargo hauler. The ship had transported grain between colonies for 40 years. Now they were installing rail guns in the cargo bays. The captain, a 60-year-old woman who had never seen combat, studied tactical manuals in her spare time. At the Jupiter ice mines, engineers argued about whether a mining drill could be repurposed as a kinetic weapon. The math said yes. The safety protocols said no. They went with the math. On Europa, a maintenance crew worked around the clock to retrofit a construction ship. The vessel had built underwater research stations. Someone realized its industrial lasers could cut through ship armor just as easily as ice. The conversion took 3 weeks. Every modification was documented. Every successful weapon integration was shared across the human networks. Someone discovered that debris deflection systems made excellent point defense. The information spread. Within days, every conversion included debris deflectors as standard anti-missile equipment. Another engineer found that ore hauler hulls, compressed and dense from years of carrying heavy loads, could absorb more damage than military armor. The report circulated. Suddenly, ore haulers became the most sought-after conversion targets. The collective knowledge of humanity's industrial base became military doctrine, not because of strategic planning or military academies, but because thousands of civilians were solving the same problem simultaneously and sharing solutions. Rachel received a message from a facility across the solar system. They had figured out how to boost reactor output by 20% using a modification to the cooling system. She forwarded it to her engineering team. Within hours, they implemented the change. This was how humanity fought, not with centuries of military tradition, but with rapid iteration and industrial-scale problem-solving. Every factory was a laboratory. Every worker was an engineer. Every failed conversion was a lesson learned and distributed. The Empire built ships in shipyards designed for the purpose, following procedures refined over generations. Humanity built ships wherever they had space and tools, making up the procedures as they went. The Empire had 300 warships, each a masterpiece of military engineering. Humanity was converting its 6,000 civilian vessels into weapons platforms, each one a unique experiment in applied desperation. Rachel watched another reactor roll off the assembly line. Imperfect, rushed, barely tested, but functional, and there would be another one tomorrow and another the day after. The comm system announced a general broadcast. She pulled it up on her screen. The Central Committee was releasing new numbers. Current conversions, 643 vessels. Projected conversions by next month, 900. projected conversions by next quarter, 1500. The Empire was welcome to check their calculations. Humanity was betting everything that the math would save them. In deep space, the HMCS Relentless continued its patrol. Scarred, ugly, barely holding together, but still flying, still dangerous. Still proof that human desperation could be weaponized. Admiral Kren was right to be afraid, not of human warships, but of human industrial capacity turned toward a single purpose. The Empire could win battles, but could they win against an entire economy? The assembly line kept moving, reactors kept rolling out, ships kept getting converted. The math kept getting worse for the Empire. The message arrived on a simple civilian frequency. No encryption, no military protocols, just text scrolling across the screen in basic trade language. Ambassador Williams read it twice to make sure she understood. The Empire requests formal negotiations regarding territorial boundaries and mutual recognition. She sat back in her chair, feeling the weight of those words. 3 months ago, the Empire had been preparing invasion fleets. Now they wanted to talk. The converted ships had worked. The desperate gamble had paid off. Her assistant rushed into the office. "Ma'am, have you seen the Imperial transmission?" "I have. Get me Director Morrison, and someone find me every military advisor we have. We need to figure out what this means." Within an hour, the conference room filled with the closest thing humanity had to leadership. Morrison attended via video link from the Production Oversight Center. General Brooks, who had been a logistics coordinator before the crisis, sat across from Williams. Dr. Okonkwo, the economic analyst who first proposed the conversion strategy, pulled up data on her tablet. "They blinked," Morrison said simply. "The Empire ran the numbers and did not like what they saw." "We should not assume this is surrender," Brooks warned. "Could be a delaying tactic while they build up forces." Okonkwo shook her head. "Their production capacity is fixed. They have dedicated military shipyards that cannot be rapidly expanded. We have the advantage of converting existing infrastructure. Time favors us, not them." Williams organized her thoughts. She had spent her career negotiating trade agreements, not military standoffs. Nothing in her experience prepared her for this. "What do they want?" "Recognition," Morrison said. "They want us to acknowledge their territory and agree not to expand. In exchange, they abandon the invasion." "That is it. We keep what we have, they keep what they have, everyone goes home." "It is never that simple, but yes, essentially." Morrison looked tired on the screen. "They are offering status quo because they realize the alternative costs too much." Brooks pulled up a star map. "Our intelligence says they have not withdrawn the invasion fleet, just repositioned it to defensive postures. They could still attack." "They could," Okonkwo agreed. "But look at the economic analysis. Every day they maintain that fleet in ready status costs resources. Every day we continue conversions adds to our numbers. The longer this standoff continues, the worse their position becomes." Williams considered, "So we stall." "No," Morrison said firmly. "We negotiate in good faith, but we do not stop converting ships. Let them see we are serious about defense while remaining open to peace. Classic strategy." "Except there is nothing classic about this situation," Williams said. "We converted ore haulers into warships and somehow convinced an empire to back down. That is not in any diplomatic handbook." "Which is why it worked," Okonkwo said. "They planned for a conventional war. We gave them an industrial nightmare. Now they want out before it gets worse." The meeting continued for hours. They drafted response messages, debated terms, argued over details. Finally, Williams sent the reply. Humanity would attend negotiations. Location, neutral station at the midpoint between territories. Time, 2 weeks. The Imperial response came quickly. Agreed. Across human space, work continued. The factories did not slow down. The conversions did not stop. If anything, the pace increased. Everyone understood the situation. Peace was possible, but only if the Empire believed humans could sustain the military buildup indefinitely. At the reactor facility, Rachel Torres pushed production to 28 units per week. At the Mars shipyard, workers completed another cargo hauler conversion. At Europa, the construction ship finished its retrofit and joined the growing fleet. 2 weeks later, Ambassador Williams arrived at the neutral station. The structure was old, built during the last major war between the Empire and another species. Now it hosted what might be the strangest peace negotiation in galactic history. The Imperial delegation arrived in a proper military transport. Sleek, powerful, intimidating. Williams arrived in a modified passenger shuttle that still had the original seat configurations. The contrast was not lost on anyone. Admiral Kren led the Imperial delegation. He looked older than his file photos suggested. Williams wondered if the past months had aged him the way they had aged her. They met in a conference room designed for neutral negotiations. Simple table, minimal decorations, translation equipment for species that needed it. Humans and Imperials both breathed the same atmosphere, which simplified things. Kren spoke first. "Ambassador Williams, thank you for attending. Admiral, we appreciate the Empire's willingness to pursue diplomatic solutions." The formalities continued for several minutes. Both sides danced around the real issue. Finally, Kren set down his data pad and spoke plainly. "We made a mistake," he said. "We assumed your species lacked military capacity because you lacked military ships. We were wrong. You lack military ships because you did not need them. When threatened, you simply converted what you already had." Williams chose her words carefully. "We did what was necessary for survival. You did what we thought was impossible. You weaponized your entire economy in 6 months. Our analysts say you can sustain this conversion rate for years, perhaps decades." Kren pulled up a holographic display. "Our current projections show that if hostilities continue, you will outnumber our fleet 5-1 within a year, 10-1 within 2 years. Your ships are inferior individually, but the numbers overwhelm that advantage." "Are you asking us to stop conversions?" "No, I am explaining why we are here." Kren deactivated the display. "The Empire cannot win a war of attrition against your industrial base. We can destroy your converted ships, but you will build more. We can damage your facilities, but you have too many to target. We can achieve tactical victories, but strategic defeat is inevitable." Williams kept her expression neutral, but inside she felt something like relief mixed with disbelief. It had worked. The desperate plan had actually worked. "The Empire proposes the following," Kren continued. "Mutual recognition of current territorial boundaries, establishment of a neutral zone between our spaces, resumption of trade relations, and a non-aggression pact with a duration of 50 years. In exchange for, you stop expanding conversions beyond defensive needs. We abandon invasion plans permanently. Both sides agree to regular military transparency measures." Williams glanced at her advisors. Morrison gave a slight nod. Brooks looked skeptical but did not object. Okonkwo was already running calculations on her tablet. "We will need to review the specific terms," Williams said, "but humanity is interested in peaceful resolution." Kren relaxed slightly, as is the Empire. The negotiations continued for 3 days. Details were hammered out. Compromises were reached. In the end, both sides signed an agreement that neither had expected to be necessary 6 months earlier. The war that never happened was over. Humanity had won by making victory too expensive to pursue. Davies stood in the observation deck of the HMCS Relentless, watching Earth rotate slowly below. The ship had returned home for the first time in 4 months. Proper repairs awaited at the orbital dock, though he wondered if they would bother. The vessel had proven itself in its current scarred condition. Behind him, footsteps approached. He turned to find Director Morrison, looking somehow older despite the peace treaty. "Captain Davies, mind if I join you?" "It is your Navy, Director, or whatever we are calling this." Morrison laughed quietly. "I think we are still figuring that out." He moved to the window. "I came to offer you a promotion, Admiral. You would oversee the converted fleet, help develop actual doctrine for these things." "I appreciate it, but no thank you." "May I ask why?" Davies gestured to the ship around them. "This is what I know, cargo haulers, or processors, ships held together with practical engineering and stubbornness. You put me in charge of a fleet, I will just turn it into a bigger version of this. I am not a military man." "None of us are," Morrison said. "That is kind of the point. We won because we did not think like military people. We thought like engineers and logistics managers and factory workers. We looked at the problem and solved it with the tools we had. We got lucky. The Empire could have called our bluff." "It was not a bluff. We really did convert 600 ships. We really could have kept going. Morrison pulled up a data pad. Do you want to know something interesting? After the treaty was signed, I had analysts run projections. If the war had continued for 1 year, we would have had 1,500 converted vessels. The Empire would have destroyed about 400 of them, losing their entire invasion fleet in the process. Then we would have had 1,100 ships left, and they would have had nothing in this sector. 1,100 barely functional warships against a galactic empire, Davies said. Still seems like we would have lost eventually. Maybe, but the cost would have been catastrophic for them. They would have needed to pull ships from other territories, weaken their borders, risk conflicts with other species, all to conquer space that would have been full of angry humans with industrial equipment. Morrison smiled. The Empire does not want to occupy territory that badly. They wanted easy expansion. We made it hard. Davies thought about the crew of the Relentless. Park, who kept reactors running that should have failed. Lin, who learned weapons systems by trial and error. The dozens of others who had no business operating a warship but did anyway. What happens now? He asked. The conversions continue but slower. We are building actual military vessels too, proper designs, but we are keeping the converted fleet active, partially as a deterrent, partially because we already have them. Morrison looked at the Earth below. The treaty includes military transparency measures. The Empire wants to verify we are not building up for invasion. We want to verify they are not either. Regular inspections, data sharing, all very civilized. You think it will last? The treaty, yes, both sides gain too much from peace to risk war again. The Empire avoids a costly conflict. We gain recognition as a peer power. Everyone wins. Davies considered. We just made up this entire strategy as we went. Converted civilian ships because we had no other option, and somehow it worked well enough to stop an invasion. That is humanity in a nutshell, Morrison said. We do not have the best technology or the longest military tradition, but we have a lot of people willing to improvise solutions with whatever tools are available. Turns out that counts for something. They stood in silence for a while, watching the planet turn. Somewhere down there, factories still produced reactors. Shipyards still converted civilian vessels. Workers still figured out how to turn mining equipment into weapons. The peace was real, but the capability remained. I should get back to my crew, Davies said finally. We are scheduled for refit, then patrol duty along the neutral zone. In the Relentless. Where else would I be? She is ugly and improvised and barely functional, but she scared an empire into negotiating. That counts for something. Morrison nodded. Keep her flying, Captain. Ships like that are a reminder to everyone what humans can do when necessary. Davies returned to the command deck. The crew was preparing for dock procedures. Park argued with a maintenance technician about reactor specifications. Lin studied the updated patrol routes. Everything felt normal, despite nothing being normal at all. A message came through from Fleet Command. New assignment: patrol the neutral zone, maintain visibility, ensure the Empire remembered the converted fleet still existed. It was not glamorous work, just presence. A reminder that humans could defend themselves. Davies accepted the orders. The Relentless undocked from Earth orbit and set course for the neutral zone. Around it, other converted ships moved into position. A cargo hauler that now carried missiles. An ice processor with weapons grafted to its hull. A construction platform that had become a mobile fortress. None of them looked like proper warships. They looked like exactly what they were, civilian equipment repurposed for military necessity. But together, they had achieved what seemed impossible 6 months earlier. Across the galaxy, other species took notice. The Empire had been forced to negotiate with a species that had no military tradition. The implications spread through diplomatic channels. If humans could weaponize their industrial base so quickly, what did that mean for future conflicts? What did it mean for the balance of power? The answer was unclear, but one thing was certain. Humanity had proven that war was not just about purpose-built weapons and trained soldiers. It was about resources, production capacity, and the willingness to improvise. The Relentless crossed into the neutral zone, scarred hull reflecting the distant stars. Behind it, hundreds of converted ships followed. Not elegant, not traditional, but effective. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Davies settled into his command chair, the same chair he had used for 3 decades of civilian cargo runs. Someone had finally removed the weapons panel from the armrest, since the ship was getting proper military retrofits. He kind of missed it. "All stations report ready," Lynn announced. "Then let us get to work," Davies said. The converted fleet spread across the neutral zone, ugly and functional and undeniably present. A floating